apologising for my northern dialect. Don't want to send anybody to sleep on a warm or sunny day. And start by making a comment about this Industrial Revolution. Just dead quickly, do we believe the hype? Let's have a quick sample size. Yes? No? Any nods of the heads? Yeah? There's a few nods of the head. That's great to hear. My own stance, I get asked this question an awful lot, and obviously I set myself up for it by mentioning the Industrial Revolution. I don't believe the Victorians stood around debating whether it was an Industrial Revolution or not. What they did was have a series of breakthroughs. They grabbed each other's ideas, remixed them, and then carried on innovating and used each other's success as a platform for their own success. I think we're doing that at the moment, and I think during the next 15 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, depending on how much the timer says, is outline what we're doing, why we think it's important, and the opportunity that's in for everybody in this room today. Okay, so I'm going to start by showing this slide, because this, for me, sums an awful lot of what's great about 3D printing at the moment. Biomimicry, familiar term for many people in education, being installed as part of the new curriculum over the next 12 months, I believe. And if you see this slide here, the tables in the foreground have been 3D printed on a little Ultimaker like that. Yes, in component parts, the build platform's not quite big enough to squeeze those in, but the reason I love starting with this slide is partly to discuss biomimicry, because I believe 3D printing is a tool to enable other current, current trends in tech to be realised, but also because this has many powerful images that come from this. If you look at the tables in the background, they are the traditional load-bearing tables that you would expect to see in some of the museums and art galleries around the place. And believe it or not, these tables in the front, which are taken from the capillary design of the heart, actually have the same load-bearing capabilities at those tables. You forget the design and the aesthetic reasons behind showing this slide. Think about the environmental impact. Rather than using great big chunks of material through better design, 3D printing, and biomimetic thinking, we can change the amount of resources that we use to do a simple project like this. The next slide I'd like to say is, for those techies in the room, who's this gentleman? Anybody? Nobody? You all do know who he's in. He's impacted your life, impacted your life more than you can imagine. This is Berners-Lee. He's the guy who invented the World Wide Web. Yeah, so 25 years ago, he was the guy who came up with the World Wide Web platform, and rather than charging a license fee and trying to monetize it for his own selfish gain, he made a decision to put it out there. And by putting it out there and allowing other people to adapt and innovate on top of his platform, the World Wide Web is now in every single one of our pockets via a PDA, I'm sure. I had the privilege of meeting Tim, and he tells a very interesting story about the decision that he had to make. Let's be honest, he's probably done all right for himself. He's not rubbing coppers together underneath a bridge somewhere asking for some favours, because the vision that he had to let other people use his brilliance as a starting point was a huge route to the innovation, and has changed the world over the last 25 years, I'm sure you'd agree. A little bit about Ultimaker. For those of you who haven't heard me present before or are familiar with the brand, we're an open source 3D printing company that started in the Netherlands in a fab lab. And it's proof that by using other people's designs, in our case the rep-rap movement from Adrian Boyer, that you can use that as a starting point to great things. Fast forward 3 years, and we've now just launched the Ultimaker 2 Go and the Ultimaker 2 Extended, both of which have been driven by community feedback, which I'll come back to in a moment. That community feedback that we mentioned has all been about innovation. That's been the secret to our success. There was no intention that Ultimaker started as a commercial offering. It started in a fab lab. As I said, our three founders were passionate hobbyists messing around with the rep-rap design. But using those designs, they became exacerbated about how difficult it was to do, how unreliable the print quality was, and how slow it was. So they said, as most innovators do, we can do this better. So using the rep-rap movement as their bedrock and as their core value proposition, and open source sharing as their guiding lights, what they decided to do was break out. So the kits were originally sold in kit format, had to be assembled. Fast forward 12 months, they were assembling those in-house, because people like me don't necessarily have time to spend 6 to 10 hours building a 3D printer. Fast forward another 12 months, and people were saying, this is fantastic, but the laser-cut wood printer that I have, which performs exceptionally, isn't what my expectation of high-tech looks like. So we brought out the Ultimaker 2. And from there, listening to community feedback again, they said to us, well, we don't need to be any faster. We don't need to be any more open. You guys are fantastic. You're allowing us to use multiple materials and allowing us to use our software on your software. But what we would like to be able to do is print on a slightly larger scale, hence the extended, and also bring the price point down a little bit so it was more affordable. One of the barriers to entry was removed because people could afford to use this tech. It's an accidental innovation success story, because by shrinking the X, Y, and Z vertices, what's actually happened is the printer prints more accurately than its mothership does, the Ultimaker 2. Great, and it shows that by listening, you can learn and new opportunities present themselves. The multi-material side of things, this is really important, because if you think about the route that most tech's gone through evolving, and if I say printing to most of you nowadays, most of you will roll your eyes and talk about the cost of consumables. Yeah? The same thing's going to happen in the 3D printing market. Already some of the big boys are starting to go down the proprietary ink route. We think it's too early in the day to be making a decision like that. Not because of the disenfranchising the end user, but more importantly because that becomes a barrier to innovation. If you're saying our guys in-house are the best and we're going to develop the best materials, what about all the other third-party stakeholders who are applying their own expertise and wisdom to generating different forms of materials? The same principle guides our, you imagine, our I'll put my teeth in, try that again, our sharing website. It's a file repository, but instead of being a file repository like iTunes, where you just go and download the template and put it back on, we're encouraging people to put their original files up there so people in different pockets around the world can use other people's ideas as a starting point and really seed innovation. A little bit about me, and yes, that is me. Those who've presented before have laughed and called me Shrek. Thank you very much. Why am I doing this? Well, my mum, my dad, my stepmom and my stepdad are all teachers. So when we started the UK operations for Ultimaker, we instinctively went, yes, it's got to be education. But thankfully, my parents had the foresight to say, stop. You go running into education saying you're going to change the world with this magic box and you haven't thought through the different components of your value proposition. A, your brand will be destroyed in no time, and B, your credibility will evaporate instantly. So we said, okay, well, what are those barriers to adoption in tech? And the great thing is, it's not just 3D printing that has these barriers. And what are the barriers? Reliability, support when you need it, whether you've got the relevant content, whether you're part of a wider movement, and also, really importantly, whether or not you feel like you're part of the community, because I know teachers, no offence to anybody in the room, like I say, my parents are, and teachers listen to teachers. Yeah? So teachers hearing the learning and development opportunities that are coming through making an investment is really exciting for us. What does the CREATE Education project mean? Well, the CREATE Education project was taken from that listening, using the listening and the feedback as to be a platform that we remixed from. Then CREATE is community, reliability, education, access, teachability and education, economics. I thought I was motivated to do all this from a commercial point of view, and at the turn of the year I became a father for the first time. And listening to the feedback that I get from teachers on a day-to-day basis and hearing how having a printer in their school has re-engaged children is really inspiring for me. And I've basically got 4 years to get it right. If I haven't got this sorted in the next 4 years, I've let my son down, never mind my company. So let me tell you a couple of stories. I apologise for Nikita and the team who've heard me tell this story on several occasions, but this is a local school, and this for me what it's all about. Look at this guy's reaction at the front. That sheer wonder at seeing something, look at this, look what it can do. And this was a school local to us where Alex and I went in and did our first demonstration. My stepfather was one of the senior managers there. And this isn't a success story initially. It's rather embarrassing because when we walked in, what happened was we'd made a real mess of the demonstration. Alex sliced his finger. We had to go in the accident book. We picked a wonky table to put the printer on. Literally, we couldn't have been stood there more red-faced. But thankfully, due to the relationship we had with the school, they invited us back to stand in front of the kids. We set one of the old original printers up, similar to the wooden one you can see in the picture here. And all the kids just went straight around the printer, apart from one lad. That one lad was Connor. And there's a Connor in every single school. In fact, in a lot of the schools, there's more than one Connor. And Connor was not interested. He carried on, sat at his terminal, typing away. Alex went across. Come on, mate, you're missing out. First 3D printer in the local area. You don't want to miss it. Not interested. Nothing for him. I thought, well, my parents are teachers. They've been pressing my buttons for a while now. I know how to appeal to his better nature. Come on, mate, all your friends are doing this. You don't want to miss out. All your friends are going to see it. Still nothing for me. Anyway, we were just printing a simple cup which had a heart embossed on the side. And as the cup finished about 15, 20 minutes later, what happened was there was a huge crescendo from his peers. Of course, now Connor was interested. His friends had socially proved it for him. So he walked across, elbowing everybody out the way, and gave us a begrudging, hey, that's pretty cool. Now, for those of us who've encountered disengaged children in a classroom, then having something like that to switch people back on is huge. But very quickly, the two things that happened after that are even more powerful. Connor went home that night, and because the school used SketchUp, which some of you will be familiar with, a free design software, and because our software is open source and free, he downloaded Cura and designed himself a door handle, which had obviously frustrated him for a long time, went back into school with an SD card he purchased himself the following day saying, Miss, please can I print this? Instantly, he's gone from the bad lad in the school and bottom of the class, disengaged, lost to education, to top of the class in the space of 24 hours. What was even more rewarding for Alex and I was that, fast forward a couple of weeks, and we saw the head of design who had the printer in the classroom, and she said, you're not going to believe this. Connor's been such a good lad. I've had the head of English, the head of science, and the head of maths saying, what have you done to Connor? Why all of a sudden he's not being disruptive? How come all of a sudden he's paying attention in class? You extrapolate that out to all the schools up and down the country and think about what an opportunity that is. We thought it was going to be secondary schools, but it's not. When we did it, because my parents teach at a secondary level, we thought that's probably about the right level of expertise, the right level of understanding. We knew that FE was going to go wild for it, and that's been proven by some of our education hubs. But primary school adoption's been really rewarded, and because the nature of primary learning is innately cross-curricular, then it's a perfect fit. Yes, it is starting to get noticed. I showed this slide up in Scotland a couple of weeks ago. It was a little bit controversial, to say the least. But the point is this, that yes, we're trying to create a groundswell. We're doing everything through a community. We're not waiting for the powers that be to bestow their approval on the CREATE Education project. What we're doing is making it happen so that when the powers that be do start to take notice, we've already got an infrastructure. We're already building the ecosystem. This is one of our hubs over at Imperial College. This guy, using 3D printing, within the space of 48 hours, had designed a solenoid haptic environmental sensory experience. And what was exciting for that was that he'd pitched it as an arts application, but myself and one of the other judges, it wasn't me who came up with the foresight, it was with the other judge, turned around and said, "You've missed it. Think about this from people with learning difficulties, or think about this from people who have sensory deprivation, being able to be put into an environment that they can sense the environment around them thanks to a motion sensor, all facilitated through 3D printing, is really inspiring." Quickly, because my time's running out, this is an aerofoil that came off a Cardiff University racing car. Anybody familiar with Formula Student? Yeah? So Cardiff University have one of our printers, and in 2013 they didn't use it at all on the car. In 2014 they did, and what they did was they inserted it right at the start of the design cycle. So every single part of that car, from the steering wheel right the way through to some of the bearings, was prototyped on an Ultimaker, which cost less than £1,000 for the one that they had at the time. How much did they save year on year as a cost saving percentage-wise? Somebody give me a number quickly. I'm running out of time. Sorry? Lots, yeah, 70% year on year. So tell me a business, forget the schools, tell me a business that doesn't want to save 70% year on year by investing in their process. But what's magic about that story is that then led to a different story. We got approached by the same team, and because we sponsored them, they said, "Do you mind awfully if the biomedical department use your 3D printer?" They've got a in theirs, which wasn't one of ours, and it didn't work very well. So they said, "Would you mind awfully if we came down and used your printer because we know it's reliable?" So they did, and you can see Hayley's knee on the table over there. What they did is took a CT scan of Hayley's knee, took a CT scan of an arthritic knee, and then in conjunction with Arthritis UK, just went around creating awareness going, that's what arthritis looks like. Most of us have a perception of what it is, but how many of us can actually describe it? How many of us can make it tangible? Not very many of us. I was stood at an event not dissimilar to this, and there was a chap stood there with a rather furrowed brow, and for those of you who read people's sayings then, you didn't know whether he was really, really happy or really, really annoyed. He just had that really puzzled look on his face. So being brave, I went across and I said, "Oh, yeah," started telling the story I've just told you, granted not quite as rushed. And what he said to me was, "This is an actual knee." And I said, "Yeah, it's Hayley's knee." He said, No, this is an actual knee. Anyway, it turns out he's an orthopaedic consultant. And what he was saying was that we've all heard about 3D printing in the medical applications, but what we struggle to do with the 3D printing is remove the cost barrier. If you send a part out for a bureau service, it comes back costing 4 figures. That's not something that you can do on every single operation. But what he's done is he started using 2 open source softwares, one of which is ours is Cura, taking the CT data, which is standard practice in every hospital up and down the country, and then slicing the models and 3D printing them prior to surgery. Of course, there's immediate wins in terms of patient-doctor confidence. The surgical team are more au fait with exactly what's going to be happening because they can touch it, they can understand the fracture. What's more powerful than that is the fact that the surgeon himself says, "I do a better job, I can actually treat these people better." I was telling this story to another guy, and he turned around and he was shaking his head saying, "Paul, you've missed it, you've completely missed it." In order to treat a complex fracture like the scapula that you see on the image there, they have to remove a huge amount of soft tissue from the fracture area. It's that soft tissue that adheres to the bone which makes the bone regenerate. So by using a 3D printing process at the start of the operating procedure, what they've managed to do is reduce recovery time. That same printer in Cardiff, you might have seen this in the news, we got another phone call from the guys at Cardiff, and they said, "Oh, do you mind awfully if would they use our printer on SelfHealing Concrete?" Sounds cool, right? Think of the applications for that. And what they're doing is they've incorporated 3D printing capsules into the cement, so that as the cement breaks under tension, an organic compound is released, which then sets and reheals the concrete. I'm running out of time, so I'm going to jump quickly ahead and just say 2 more things. One, the CREATE Education project's working. This is a local college to us, and it's not our money that's facilitating it, but they're investing $6.5 million into a local engineering centre and are incorporating 3D printing and design throughout their processes. Please, 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 other than coming and chatting at the stand when you get a minute, please, when you leave here today, check this out, because this is the sort of thing that I want every school in the country to be contributing to. This is called Robots for Good, and in a nutshell, what it's doing is basically bringing 3D design, coding, and hospitalised children together to give them the opportunity to leave the hospital and go to the zoo or the aquarium. It's amazing what you can do with technology. Just to close, my call to action isn't buy a printer. That's not what I'm asking for you today. What I am asking you for is that you come and have a chat and talk about how we can share ideas, because there's an opportunity that using our tech as a tool, we can really inspire learning and development for everybody. Thanks very much.